How many times did you replay that conversation in your head today? How many different ways did you imagine that situation going wrong? How long did you spend trying to figure out what someone really meant by what they said? And after all that thinking, all that analyzing, all that mental energy, did anything actually change? Of course not, because you're not solving problems, you're rehearsing disasters. And your brain has turned you into a full-time disaster producer. Want to know how to quit that job? Keep watching. Look, you already know overanalyzing is a problem. You probably read articles about it, try to stop doing it, maybe even beat yourself up for doing it. But nothing's worked because nobody's told you the real reason you can't stop. Here's what you're going to get in the next 25 minutes. I'm going to show you the 3 irrational beliefs that create your overanalyzing pattern. Not surface-level stuff, the actual demands you're making on yourself, other people, and the world that guarantee you'll overthink everything. And here's what makes this different from every other video you've watched. I'm not going to tell you to just stop or be present or any of that vague nonsense. I'm going to give you the exact thinking errors you're making and the specific disputes you can use against them. Because here's the truth most people won't tell you. Your overanalyzing isn't random. It's not a personality flaw. It's a logical consequence of holding impossible demands. And once you change the demands, the overanalyzing stops on its own. Not because you're trying harder, because you've removed the fuel that powers it. So if you're ready to actually understand why your brain does this and what to do about it, stay with me. This is going to be uncomfortable, but works. Your overanalyzing comes from demanding certainty in an uncertain world. You've convinced yourself that if you just think about something long enough, you'll eliminate all doubt and risk. This is what I call masturbation. You're telling yourself, I must know the right answer. I must not make a mistake. I must be certain before I act. And that demand is absolute horseshit. Let me show you why. You're not analyzing to understand. You're analyzing to achieve an impossible standard of certainty. Every time you think, but what if, you're demanding a guarantee that life can't give you. Think about it. When you replay a conversation, you try to figure out what the other person really thought. But you can't know that. Ever. You can't get inside their head. You can't see their actual thoughts. And demanding that you should know it, that you must figure it out, creates endless analysis. Because the answer you're looking for doesn't exist. You're searching for certainty in a place where certainty can't be found. And here's what you've done. You've confused feeling certain with being safe. Your brain thinks if I feel uncertain, something bad will happen. But that's not true. Uncertainty is just uncomfortable. It's not dangerous. The overanalyzing isn't protecting you from bad outcomes. It's protecting you from uncomfortable feelings. And you're paying a huge price for that protection. You're spending hours in your head, exhausting yourself, creating anxiety, avoiding action, all to avoid a feeling that wouldn't kill you anyway. Here's the kicker. The more you analyze to gain certainty, the more uncertain you feel. Why? Because analysis generates options, and options generate doubt. You start with one decision and end up with 17 scenarios to consider. Then you analyze those scenarios, which creates more scenarios, and now you're completely paralyzed. You've analyzed yourself into a corner. It's like trying to find the end of a circle. The more you walk, the more circle you find. That's what certainty seeking does. It creates more uncertainty. Let me ask you something. Has all your analyzing ever made you feel certain? Really certain? Or do you just analyze until you're exhausted, then make a decision anyway, or avoid it completely? If analyzing worked, you do it once and be done. But you do it over and over because you're chasing something that doesn't exist. You're trying to achieve a feeling that reality won't give you. It's like trying to get perfectly dry while standing in the rain. You can shake off water all day, but you're still going to be wet. Think about the last time you spent an hour deciding what to order at a restaurant. You read the menu 17 times. You asked the server questions. You imagined how each dish would taste. You considered what you were in the mood for. And after all that analyzing, did the food taste better? No. It probably tasted exactly the same as it would have if you'd picked something in 2 minutes. All that analysis didn't improve the outcome. It just delayed it and made you anxious. That's the certainty, demand, and action. You believe that more analysis equals better outcomes. But there's no correlation. None. In fact, the opposite is often true. Quick decisions based on decent information usually work out fine. Endless analysis based on imaginary scenarios usually works out badly because you never actually decide. You just avoid. Now, demanding certainty is bad enough. But there's a second irrational demand that makes your overanalyzing even worse. And this one's sneaky because it sounds responsible. Most of your overanalyzing happens in social situations. You replay conversations. You obsess over what you said. You script what you're going to say. Why? Because you're demanding that people must not judge you negatively, must not think badly of you, must approve of everything you do and say. This demand turns every interaction into a high-stakes performance where your worth as a person is on trial. When you overanalyze what someone said or how they reacted, you're trying to read their mind. You're thinking, did they think I was stupid? Did I offend them? What do they really mean? But here's reality. You can't read minds. Nobody can. And the reason you're trying is because you believe it would be terrible, awful, catastrophic if they thought something negative about you. That's the irrational demand. You're not just wanting their approval, which is fine. You're demanding it. You're saying, I need this. I must have it. I can't be okay without it. And that demand makes you script conversations before they happen. You rehearse what you'll say, how you'll say it, what you'll do if they respond a certain way. You think you're being prepared, but you're actually trying to control their perception of you. You're demanding perfection in an improvised interaction. And when reality doesn't match your script, which it never does, you analyze what went wrong. You replay the conversation, looking for your mistakes. You prosecute yourself for not following the script you created. After social interactions, you replay them like game footage. I shouldn't have said that. Why did I say it that way? They probably thought I was weird. This isn't reflection. It's persecution. You're prosecuting yourself for the crime of being human. And the evidence you're using? Your imagination of what they thought. Not facts. Not what they actually said. Your feelings about what they might have thought. You're convicting yourself based on imaginary evidence. Here's what you need to understand. Needing approval isn't the same as wanting approval. Wanting it is fine. We're social animals. We like being liked. But needing it, demanding it, believing you can't be okay without it, that's what creates the obsessive analysis. Because if you need their approval to be okay, every interaction becomes a life or death situation in your head. Did I get it? Did I lose it? Am I safe? Am I in danger? And your brain treats it like survival, which means it analyzes every detail looking for threats. I had a client once who spent hours analyzing text messages, trying to decode hidden meanings. Someone would say, sounds good, and she'd spend 2 hours thinking, does that mean they're actually annoyed? Are they being sarcastic? Should I have said something different? She was trying to extract certainty and approval from 2 words. And the torture she put herself through over those 2 words was unbelievable. All because she demanded that she must know what they really thought and they must think well of her. The approval demand makes you treat mild social interactions like nuclear negotiations. You're analyzing tone, word choice, timing, subtext, all try to make sure you didn't lose approval points. But here's reality. Some people won't like you. Some people will judge you. Some people will think you're weird or annoying or wrong. And you know what happens when they do? Absolutely nothing. Nothing catastrophic. You don't die. You don't lose everything. You don't get exiled. You feel uncomfortable for a while, and then you move on. That's it. But your demand that they must approve makes you treat their disapproval like death. So you're demanding certainty and approval. But there's a third demand that ties these together and makes everything worse. This is the one that keeps you stuck in analysis, even when you know it's not helping. Underneath your overanalyzing is a demand for control. You believe that if you think about something enough, analyze it from every angle, consider every possibility, you'll be able to control what happens. This is magical thinking disguised as rational planning. And it's keeping you trapped in your head instead of living your life. Your brain has tricked you into believing that thinking equals doing. When you analyze a problem, it feels productive. It feels like you're working on it, like you're making progress. But you're not. You're avoiding it. You're substituting mental rehearsal for actual action because action means giving up control of the outcome. and you've demanded that you must control the outcome. You must know what's going to happen. You must be able to prevent bad things and guarantee good things. And since you can't do that through action because action involves risk and uncertainty, you try to do it through analysis. Every what-if question is an attempt to control future possibilities. What if I say the wrong thing? What if they get mad? What if I make a mistake? You're trying to pre-live every possible future so you can control which one happens. But life doesn't work that way. There are infinite possibilities. You can't analyze them all. And even if you could, analyzing them doesn't reduce them. It multiplies them. Every scenario you imagine creates 3 more scenarios. Every answer creates 2 more questions. You're not controlling possibilities. You're creating them. You tell yourself you're preparing, but you're procrastinating. Real preparation has an endpoint. You gather information, you make a decision, you take action. Done. Overanalyzing has no endpoint because you're not preparing for action. You're trying to eliminate risk. And since risk can't be eliminated, you analyze forever. It's procrastination dressed up as diligence. It's avoidance disguised as responsibility. Here's reality. You control very little. You don't control what other people think. You don't control outcomes. You don't control most of what happens to you. What you do control is your actions and your reactions. That's it. But your overanalyzing is focused entirely on the things you can't control. You're spending your energy trying to control the uncontrollable while neglecting the only thing you actually can control, which is what you do next. And when you accept that you can't control outcomes, something amazing happens. You make better decisions faster. Why? Because you're not trying to find the perfect decision that guarantees success. You're looking for a good enough decision that you can implement. And good enough decisions lead to action, which leads to feedback, which leads to learning. Overanalyzing leads nowhere. It's a closed loop. You think, you worry, you imagine, and nothing changes. I worked with someone who couldn't start a business because they were analyzing every possible market scenario. What if the economy crashes? What if competitors undercut me? What if customers don't like the product? They spent 2 years analyzing. 2 years. And you know what happened during those 2 years? Other people started businesses, made mistakes, learned from them, and succeeded. Meanwhile, this person was still analyzing whether it was safe to start. They were demanding control over market forces, economic conditions, customer preferences, things nobody controls. And that demand kept them stuck. Think about driving. You can't control other drivers. You can't control traffic. You can't control weather. You can only control your response to those things. And you drive anyway. You don't spend an hour before each trip analyzing every possible traffic pattern. You get in the car and drive. If there's traffic, you deal with it. If someone cuts you off, you react. You accept that you can't control those things, so you don't try. But in other areas of your life, you demand control, so you analyze endlessly trying to get it. Okay, so you've got these 3 demands creating your overanalyzing. You must be certain. You must have approval. You must control outcomes. But knowing the problem isn't enough. You need to know how to dispute these demands. And that's what we're doing right now. I'm giving you the exact process to shut down overanalyzing when it starts. The way to stop overanalyzing isn't to stop thinking. It's to change what you're thinking. Specifically, you need to dispute the irrational demands creating the analysis loop. This isn't positive thinking. It's not affirmations. It's actively challenging the beliefs that make overanalyzing feel necessary. And it works. Here's how it works. A is the activating event. You have a decision to make. B is your belief. I must be certain. I must be approved of. I must be in control. C is the consequence. Overanalyzing, anxiety, paralysis. Most people think it causes C. The situation causes the anxiety. Wrong. B causes C. Your beliefs about the situation cause your reaction. Change the belief, change the consequence. It's that simple. When you catch yourself overanalyzing, ask where's the evidence that I must be certain. Is there a law of the universe that says you must know the outcome before you act? Show me the evidence. Where is it written? It's not written anywhere because it doesn't exist. You're making up a rule that has no basis in reality. Where's the evidence that someone's disapproval would be catastrophic? Would you literally die? Would you lose everything? Would you be exiled from society? No. You'd feel uncomfortable. That's it. You'd feel bad for a little while, and then you'd move on. When you look for evidence of your demands, you won't find it because they're not based on reality. They're based on feelings. Even if certainty were desirable, does it logically follow that you must have it? No. Wanting something doesn't mean you must have it. I want $1 million. Does that mean I must have $1 million? Of course not. Lots of things would be nice to have. That doesn't make them requirements for functioning. Does it make sense that you can't act without approval? If that were true, no one would ever do anything because someone always disapproves. Every action you take, someone somewhere thinks it's wrong, and yet people act anyway. The logic falls apart when you examine it. This is the big one. Ask yourself, is this overanalyzing helping me or hurting me? Is it moving you toward your goals or away from them? Is it making you happier or more anxious? Is it improving your relationships or damaging them? When you honestly assess the functionality, overanalyzing fails every test. It doesn't work. It's never worked. It won't suddenly start working tomorrow. Stop defending a strategy that doesn't produce results. That's insane. After you dispute the irrational demand, you need a rational alternative. Instead of I must be certain, try I prefer to have more information, but I can decide without certainty. Instead of I must have approval, try like approval, but I can handle disapproval without falling apart. Instead of I must control the outcome, try I can control my actions. Outcomes will be what they are. These aren't feel-good mantras. They're accurate statements about reality. They're true. And when you replace demands with preferences, the urgency disappears. The anxiety drops. The overanalyzing stops because you've removed the fuel. Let me walk you through an example. Someone's overthinking a text message response. They've written 17 drafts. They're analyzing tone, word choice, whether to use a period or exclamation point. That's the activating event. The belief is I must say this perfectly. I must not offend them. I must control how they perceive me. The consequence is paralysis, anxiety, wasted time. So you dispute. Where's the evidence I must say it perfectly? There is none. Does it make sense that one text message determines the entire relationship? No. Is this helping me? Absolutely not. The rational alternative is I'd like to communicate clearly, but I can send something good enough and handle whatever response I get. Then you send a text. Done. 2 minutes instead of 2 hours. Now, disputation works, but there's a trap people fall into. They turn disputation into another form of overanalyzing. They analyze whether they're disputing correctly. They worry about whether they're doing it right. They overthink the process of stopping overthinking. Don't do that. Disputation should take 30 seconds, maybe a minute. You catch the demand, you challenge it, you replace it, you act. That's it. If you're spending 20 minutes disputing, you're not disputing. You're overanalyzing disputation. The ultimate cure for overanalyzing isn't better analysis. It's action. Imperfect action. Messy action. Action before you feel ready. Because overanalyzing is a symptom of an action, and the only way to break the pattern is to prove to yourself that you can act without certainty, approval, or control. You don't need perfect information to act. You need enough information. I use the 70% rule. If you have about 70% of the information you'd ideally want, that's enough. Make the decision. Take the action. Will you sometimes be wrong? Yes. But you'll be wrong less often than you think, and you'll get feedback faster, which helps you course correct. Compare that to waiting for 100% information, which never comes. You wait forever, make no progress, and learn nothing. Give yourself a time limit for decisions based on their actual importance. Small decisions. What to eat, what to wear, how to word an email. 5 minutes maximum. That's it. If you can't decide in 5 minutes, pick randomly because it doesn't matter. Medium decisions. Which job offer, whether to have a difficult conversation. 24 hours. Big decisions. Career change, relationship commitment. 1 week. When the time's up, you decide with whatever information you have. This prevents analysis from expanding to fill infinite time. And trust me, if you don't set limits, analysis will expand forever. Action gives you something analysis never can. Real feedback. When you act, you learn what actually happens, not what you imagine might happen. In reality, is usually far less dramatic than your analyzed scenarios. The person doesn't hate you. The outcome isn't catastrophic. The mistake is fixable. Most of what you worry about never happens. And the things that do happen are usually manageable. But you only learn this by acting. Every action that doesn't result in disaster weakens your irrational demands. Every time you act without certainty and survive, your brain gets a little less convinced that certainty is necessary. You need to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Uncertainty feels bad. Potential disapproval feels bad. Lack of control feels bad. But feelings aren't facts. You can feel uncertain and still act. You can feel anxious and still speak. You can feel out of control and still move forward. The discomfort is the price of admission for a functional life. Pay it. Stop demanding that you shouldn't have to feel discomfort. You can stand it. You've been standing discomfort your whole life. Every time you've been embarrassed, rejected, disappointed, uncertain, you stood it. You're still here. The discomfort didn't kill you, and it won't kill you next time either. Deliberately do things imperfectly. Send emails with minor typos. Make decisions without researching every option. Have conversations without scripting them. Start projects before you feel ready. This isn't about being careless. It's about proving to yourself that imperfection isn't catastrophic. Each imperfect action is evidence against your irrational demands. It shows you that you can survive mistakes, that people don't abandon you over small errors, that outcomes often work out fine even when you don't control every detail. I worked with someone who started making bad decisions on purpose just to prove they could survive them. They chose restaurants randomly. They sent emails without proofreading. They spoke in meetings without planning every word. And you know what happened? Nothing. Nothing bad. Sometimes the restaurant was mediocre. Sometimes the email had a typo. Sometimes they stumbled over words. And none of it mattered. Nobody cared as much as they thought they would. And that realization was life-changing. It broke the demand for perfection. Think about learning to swim. You can't learn by analyzing swimming. You can read about strokes, watch videos, study technique. But until you get in the water and actually swim, you don't learn. And when you first get in, you're bad at it. You swallow water. You flail around. You feel like you're drowning. But you keep doing it, and you get better. Overanalyzing is like standing at the edge of the pool forever, studying swimming, never getting in. You're not learning. You're just avoiding the discomfort of being bad at something. All right, we've covered the demands, the disputation, the action. But there's one more thing you need to understand if you're going to make this permanent. And it's probably not what you expect. You need to accept yourself as someone who overanalyzes while simultaneously working to change the behavior. This sounds contradictory, but it's not. Self-condemnation doesn't motivate change. It creates shame, which creates more anxiety, which creates more overanalyzing. You need to separate your worth from your behavior. Overanalyzing doesn't mean you're broken or flawed or less valuable than other people. It means you learned a coping strategy that worked at some point but doesn't work anymore. That's it. You're a fallible human being doing fallible human things. When you stop condemning yourself for overanalyzing, you remove one of the major reasons you overanalyze. You're no longer analyzing whether you're okay as a person. You already know you're okay. Your worth isn't on trial. Your behavior isn't your identity. You can say, I overanalyze without saying, I am an overthinker by nature and always will be. You can acknowledge the pattern without making it permanent. When you separate behavior from identity, you create space for change. But when you fuse them, when overanalyzing becomes who you are, you're stuck defending it. You're stuck saying, well, that's just how I am. No, that's just what you do. And what you do can change. When you beat yourself up for overanalyzing, what do? You analyze why you overanalyze. You think about how to stop overanalyzing. You overanalyze your overanalyzing. Self-condemnation is just another demand. I must not overanalyze. And that demand creates more anxiety, which triggers more analysis. You're fighting the pattern with the same thinking that created it. It's like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. This is one of my core principles. You accept yourself simply because you exist, not because you meet certain standards. You're acceptable as a person whether you overanalyze or not, whether people approve of you or not, whether you succeed or fail. This isn't self-esteem, which is conditional and fragile. This is self-acceptance, which is unconditional and stable. And when you have it, you can change behaviors without needing them to change to be okay. You're okay now. You'll be okay if you change. You'll be okay if you don't. Your worth isn't dependent on fixing this. You're going to overanalyze again, probably today. That doesn't mean this didn't work or that you failed. It means you're human. Change isn't linear. You'll have good days and bad days. The question isn't, did I eliminate overanalyzing completely? It's, am I analyzing less than I was last month? Am I catching it faster? Am I recovering quicker? That's progress. And progress is what matters, not perfection. I had a client who stopped overanalyzing only after accepting that overanalyzing didn't make them a bad person. For years, they hated themselves for it. They thought it meant they were weak, indecisive, broken. And that self-hatred made them analyze more, because now they were analyzing whether they were worthwhile as a human being. When they finally accepted themselves, when they said, okay, I overanalyze, and I'm still a valuable person, the pressure dropped. The urgency disappeared, and they could actually work on the behavior instead of defending their worth. Think about it like physical habits. You don't condemn yourself for having tight muscles. You just stretch them. You don't say I'm a terrible person because my hamstrings are tight. You say my hamstrings are tight, I should stretch more. Same thing with overanalyzing. It's a behavior, not a character flaw, not evidence that you're defective. Just something you do that you're working on changing. Stop rating your entire self based on one behavior. You're not your overanalyzing. You're a person who overanalyzes. Big difference. One makes change impossible. The other makes it possible. Let me make this simple. You overanalyze because you're making 3 irrational demands. You must be certain, you must be approved of, and you must control outcomes. These demands are impossible to meet, so you analyze endlessly trying to meet them anyway. The solution isn't to think better thoughts or be more positive. It's to dispute those demands. Ask for evidence. Question the logic. Test the functionality. And when you realize the demands are horseshit, replace them with preferences. You'd prefer certainty, but you don't need it. You'd like approval, but you can handle disapproval. You'd enjoy control, but you can act without it. Then, and this is crucial, you act anyway. Before you feel ready. Before you have all the information. Before you've analyzed every possibility. You take imperfect action and learn from the feedback. That's how you break the pattern. Not by thinking about breaking it, by actually doing something different. And you do all of this while accepting yourself as a fallible human being who's learning to function better. No self-condemnation, no shame, just honest acknowledgement of what's not working and commitment to doing something different. This isn't easy. Changing deeply held beliefs never is. But it's simple, and it works. I've seen it work for thousands of people over decades. It'll work for you if you actually use it. Now, you might be thinking, okay, I get the overanalyzing thing, but what about when I can't stop worrying about things that haven't even happened yet? That's anticipatory anxiety, and it's related but different. I break down exactly how to handle future-focused anxiety and why your brain keeps running disaster simulations in this video right here. Click it. Watch it. Stop analyzing whether you should and just do it. You've got the tools. Now use them.